Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to another Pallavi Market Research video. Today, we are going to be discussing how different civilizations valued and directed intelligence. We're going to start off with ancient Egypt, one of my favorite civilizations to study in this context, because I believe it is nearly impossible for us, as Western men and women living in the 21st century, to comprehend how different their consciousness was from ours. Their group identity, how they defined what a successful life looked like, and simply how they spent their time seeking deep meditative states was just so different. The Egyptians at this time, to oversimplify this to some degree, oriented who they deemed to be their most intelligent to study life after death, to figure out what happens when you die. The image from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, shown here, portrays the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth. Here, the deceit's heart, which was considered the seat of emotions, thoughts, and intentions, would be placed on one side of the scale. On the other side of the scale was the feather of Mahat, symbolizing truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than or equal in weight to the feather, it meant the person had lived a righteous and just life, and their soul would be allowed to pass on to the afterlife, where they would enjoy eternal peace. However, if the heart was heavier than the feather, weighed down by the sins and wrongdoings of the person's life, it would be devoured by Amit, where the soul would be annihilated, and Amit is that deity there with the crocodile head. Of course, the methods used to determine this were determined by what I like to call collective subjectivity. If enough people experience a highly comparable subjective experience, then truth was garnered from that collective subjective experience. An example of this can be found studying the similarities of ayahuasca experiences in the Amazon. Over hundreds of years, the people living in this region taking ayahuasca identified various themes in their experience. One of those themes related to seeing jaguars, so they began to worship them. But about 15 years ago, we discovered that jaguars actually eat from the same yage root that is used to brew ayahuasca. And when they are seen doing so, they look like they are tripping the fuck out. So, this collective subjectivity in altered states may have actually informed an observation that was a lot more scientific and profound than we may have thought of otherwise. This is a mode of, I'm not sure what to call it, truth discovery that is simply not present or valued in today's modern Western culture. So, if we move on to ancient Greece, here they valued wisdom and intelligence, but more specifically, wisdom then intelligence. All the great mathematicians and philosophers were forced to engage in raw MBS, mind, body, spirit, personal development before pursuing knowledge in a specific field. For example, Plato's birth name was not Plato. Plato was his wrestling nickname. They forced their young men to do hard things that forced them to become wise before engaging in any real knowledge seeking or involvement in the political world. In ancient China, the teachings of Confucius and their other leaders oriented their people to studying moral wisdom and social harmony, group identity over individual identity, aka the ability to contribute to the governance and stability of society over the pursuit of individual ambition. Now, instead of covering the Renaissance, which I believe was sufficiently covered in your primary schools, I figured we'd cover an underappreciated era in Western civilization. The Carolingian Renaissance, which took place in the late 8th to 9th centuries in what was modern day France. This was led by Emperor Charlemagne. In this culture, they sought to find balance between temporal and spiritual education. Temporal meaning practical education, like reading, writing, liberal arts education. Charlemagne was highly unique at this time because he sought to educate everybody, not just the elites. He mandated that every single monastery and cathedral open schools for the young boys around them, irrelevant of their class or where they came from. This period was a time where intelligence was seen as a tool for both spiritual and temporal power, with the goal of strengthening the empire and ensuring its continuity. Lastly, let's discuss the United States. Of course, how people look back on this question of how our civilization valued and directed intelligence is still to some degree to be determined. But I heard Terence McKenna claim once in one of his talks that Moby Dick, the image illustrated here, will be treated as our civilization's Iliad, meaning it will be the story that most closely represents the story of our values, touching on themes regarding the pursuit of knowledge, the mastery over nature, scientific curiosity, intellectual endeavor, the pursuit of wealth, and most of all, the tragedy of hubris. And I believe it is fair to say that our civilization values a mode of intelligence that orients us to pursue knowledge in the context of science, technology, engineering, enterprise value, and most of all, military led innovation, without having those preceding requirements for wisdom like the ancient Greeks had. Cultural moments like Oppenheimer, I believe, signal that these themes and ideas within the story of Moby Dick's book, or the Book of Moby Dick, signal that McKenna was right. That is today's video. Please like, subscribe, and share this with your friends if you found this video valuable to you. We'll pick this up again tomorrow. All right, guys? Peace and victory, all right? Let's go.